Planet Express is in trouble yet again, but this time it's not a starship malfunction or an alien attack. No, it's financial difficulties. As Hermes and the professor hold an investor meeting to inform everyone that the company is verging on bankruptcy, Fry sneaks out to find his way into a support group meeting for people who are cryogenically frozen. There, he meets a sleazy businessman from the 1980s who froze himself to wait the discovery of a cure for his terminal bonitis. The pair hit it off, and Fry offers to help him get a job at Planet Express. That guy, who apparently is named Steve Castle but is not revealed anywhere in the episode, having not yet found work since he was defrosted, is grateful. Fry and that guy return to the Planet Express stockholders meeting where a revolt against Professor Farnsworth is in progress. A vote is called for a new CEO, and Fry nominates who else but that guy, and in the end, that guy wins. His first order of business is to declare Fry his vice chairman, and he then pursues his retro 1980s executive style by giving the company a complete branding overhaul. The expense of his new ad campaign, as well as that guy's lavish executive lifestyle, soon make Planet Express a big name in the shipping business, but anger all of the employees. Dr. Zoidberg, insisting that their chickens will soon come home to roost and that the company is circling the drain, sells his shares to that guy, and soon his words prove prescient, as that guy finally drains Planet Express's coffers and announces they're selling to MomCorp. Everyone gathers at the Intergalactic Stock Exchange for the buyout. Leela, Bender, and the others all vote against the acquisition. But the shares acquired from Zoidberg give that guy majority control, and he soon outvotes them to approve the deal. Everyone screams in outrage, only to find themselves forcibly ejected from the room for their rowdiness. Outside, someone asks them why they're so upset when Planet Express's value has skyrocketed lately, and once the sale goes through, all of their shares will make them millionaires. However, just before the buyout concludes, that guy succumbs to a lethal attack of bonitis. Tragically for him, in his haste to make it back to the top of the corporate ladder, he forgot to have it cured. And so he dies, and all of his shares pass to his vice chairman, Fry. Regretful for how he let his corporate success go to his head and for how poorly he's treated his friends in the past weeks, Fry makes an announcement. He is passing control of Planet Express back to its founder, Professor Farnsworth. The others burst back into the room and beg Fry to stop, that if he sells the company, they can all be rich, only to find that the moment Fry made that announcement, the share price crashed to mere pennies. Everyone is crushed by this development, but Fry avoids the sale to MomCorp, and at least they still have their jobs. Lesson learned, never trust corporate types. Welcome to Space Podcast 3000, where the future is in the past.
You know, it has been a while since we've had an episode that was just one long angry rant about capitalism. I'm sorry to have to go there again, but the subject matter of this episode makes it kind of unavoidable.
Oh, Reaganomics. Even in the future, we can't get rid of you.
God. This freaking 80s executive, one, I don't know why he isn't given a name in this episode. He's just
that could be part of the joke, the fact that he's just a nameless 80s guy, that there were thousands of them back then.
True, but, he is just everything that disgusts me about the investor class. This guy is a human-shaped monument to Wall Street excess. Every meeting that he hosts is just full of nonsensical rambling, of meaningless buzzwords. He even gets Fry doing it. This culture of nepotism, promoting his buddies, wasting time and company money on personal recreation, like taking Fry to an ape fight or out for an expensive dinner, blaming everything that's ever gone wrong on the prior CEO, which is tragically common in some industries, particularly entertainment, where they also often just cancel every project their predecessor greenlit. When Hermes calls this guy a flashy con man, he's absolutely right. That pretty much describes every business executive.
And the fact is, he's right. That was his entire plan, was to sell the... I don't know if that was his plan from the beginning, but his entire plan is to sell the company to Mom.
Oh, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. When he claims that the secret to success is not to work hard, but that it's all about appearances... He is absolutely right. If hard work was the key to success, the world would look very different. Every minimum wage laborer works harder than every executive. Everyone, without exception. You even see this with Fry and his 2 o'clock magician, where he says, "Believe it or not, I have more important things to do today than laugh and clap my hands," implying that on a regular day, that's all he's doing, that he provides no value to the company, because he really doesn't. He's
I think that joke is reading a little bit too much into it. I just interpreted it the fact that Fry is the kind of person that would hire a personal magician.
He would, but also like, it really does have this little bit of a subtext to it where, yeah, like the executives don't add anything to the company. They don't do anything.
Like the writers of the episode, it's clearly they're clearly in on the joke. They clearly wrote this guy to be unlikable. That's why he dies at the end in a very hilarious way.
But like, God, with this fucking guy. But yeah, like as you were saying, he is just so depressingly right. Because when it comes to getting investors and making tons of money in business, it really is more about the appearance of success than actually being successful. Which inevitably leads to that cycle of flash-in-the-pan startups that make a ton of buzz and start skyrocketing in shareholder value, then eventually just get bought out or collapse in a few years without ever actually doing anything, which fucks over all their employees who are now out of a job. And of course, this is exactly what happens. Well, what almost happens when this guy, agrees to sell the company to Mon to Gut for parts.
Well, although in this case, all the employees would have gotten like $1 million from it.
Only because they happen to own shares, because it was a small enough company for that. Not every company will do that. Most of the time...
True, of course,
The grunts on the floor just... It's like, congrats, you don't have a job now. Bye.
Scruffy would have really come out. He had like 500... he had about 50,000 shares? He'd have been a multi-millionaire.
God, I am still mad about Fitbit buying Pebble, not even for the product, but just because they wanted their coding team. And that they did this and announced it, I think, like less than a month before Pebble's new Kickstarter funded, by the way, product was set to launch. Mm-hmm. That was really frustrating to this day. Because I liked Pebble. They were a really good smartwatch.
So, yeah, you really like this episode, huh?
Just like... Because, like, the people actually causing all of his problems all the time, they always just get away scot-free. They always just, they face no consequences. They get away richer than before, ready to start it all over again with a new company. Even when an exec gets fired for being terrible, they always just get a golden parachute and immediately some other corporation puts them in charge. There is nowhere to fail but upward for these people. I'm sorry. Like... God.
So, a couple of the jokes in this episode. I like Scruffy reading National Pornographic. That's such a simple joke, but...
Or the background gag of the hotel offering free in-room porn or Bible.
I saw the Bible part, but it disappeared before I could read the whole thing.
The parody of that one infamous Apple ad.
Oh, yeah, the Apple ad from the 1980... That was like right before my time. I never remember that commercial, but I remember everybody talking about how influential and amazing it was. Because we had a Macintosh Classic, so I was right around at the zeitgeist of that sort of thing, but I never saw that commercial.
You've never seen it?
Well, I've seen it, but I never saw it when it was actually airing.
Oh, okay.
You know?
I mean, I wasn't even born yet when it was airing.
Yeah.
Well, mostly it was airing in the context of this was a great commercial from that time. It wasn't just airing in the wild.
Well, it is a very striking advertisement, but just like Leela points out here, like, you just watch this ad and you have no idea what Apple does.
Well, I mean, if you watch the original commercial, they do kind of put it in context, like the new Macintosh Classic, to show that 1984 won't be like 1984. Which is really kind of fucking hilarious in retrospect, because Apple is so much about conforming. Their fans are frequently called sheep.
Yeah, Apple's, like... At the time, they were definitely more of a, proper competitor to Microsoft, but these days, their whole ecosystem is so closed down, it's a wall.
They're not even a computer company. They're a gadget company.
Yeah, they make so much more money off of their cell phones. They still only make computers just as an incidental legacy thing.
Yeah, nowadays, Apple is more about the glitz and glamour and the, I'm trying to think of the word, like...
The image, the aesthetic.
Yeah, it's about its image, the look, than it is about actually being a working product.
Now, I will give them this. as crappy as their physical hardware builds are getting these days a lot of the time, I will give them credit for having an OS that is easy to use, because I do know people who are not great with computers and find, Mac OS a lot more intuitive and can just do what they need to do better on a Mac. But, it is just so much more closed down, and you don't have the same level of freedom that you do on, Windows or especially, Linux.
Which is exactly the problem. The fact that they do lock this stuff down, they make it easy to use by cutting out any opportunity of being creative with it.
Yeah, I'm a power user. I use a lot of these features where, I need to get under the hood and mess with stuff.
You use Linux, don't you?
No, I'm on Windows, but I have gone in and messed with the freaking registry, the kind of thing where if you screw it up, you can render the computer unbootable.
Yeah.
I used to have a short-lived job. Well, I say short-lived. I used to, fix computers. There was a local computer shop nearby where I worked freelance for several years. So, I know what I'm doing. Not everyone does. That said, it does frustrate me how newer versions of Windows, especially Windows 11, are taking cues from Apple and starting to lock things down and take features, and access away from the user.
Or not just that, but also the whole right to repair thing. Apple is so much against it, and that just offends me on a base level.
Right?
That whole you don't own this object that you bought. If something goes wrong, you have to go to a licensed dealer, and you have to pay us this exorbitant amount of money just to fix something that should not have been a problem in the first place.
Did I ever share the story of why my dad stopped buying Mac products, stopped buying Apple stuff? So, when I was growing up, my parents both, used a lot of Macs. They had, Windows PCs, but they had iPhones. They each had their own iPad. I had an iPhone at the time. I've since switched to Android. But for years, my parents would have this problem with iTunes that I never had, and I have no idea why. But, not all of their music would transfer onto their devices. It would just be a random selection. Half of this album, 2 songs off this. Just weird. No rhyme or reason to it. And it would be different to every device. It made no sense. And they could never figure out what the issue with iTunes was. So eventually my dad just took their iPhones, took their respective iPads, and the laptop that they were using, they had all the music on they were using for iTunes, and brought them to the Apple store and explained the situation. The guy just looks at the laptop and is like, "This isn't ours. I can't do anything for you." And so my dad's just like, "Let me get this straight. So I have 2 $500 iPads, 2 $400 iPhones, but because I don't have a $1,000 MacBook, you're refusing to help me." And he was like, "Yes, that's correct." And my dad was just like, "Okay." And he switched to Android and did not buy another Apple product since.
Yeah, that's...
My mom is still using the iPhone, but, she is the one holdout in the family at this point.
Well, my mom has an iPad, but she uses Android. She uses Android mostly so she can come to me if she needs help with her phone. But her tablet, she used the tablet. She used it mostly for Facebook games and stuff like that, which is whatever. She's retired. That's her whole thing. But yeah, if I had to guess, I would assume that it was a rights issue with the music, because you can only have the things on 3 or 4 devices or something. So they're trying to share it across 4 different devices. It could be you need to delete the rights off of another one, which, I mean, that's just all I'm thinking. But in retrospect, it's kind of pointless to discuss now. But yeah, they made the right choice. They just fuck this whole rights thing. I have my Android.
Well, I don't know about the rights thing, because it wasn't just purchases from iTunes. It was also CDs that they had ripped. So I don't know. But I had never had that problem. But anyway, we've gone about Apple for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more to talk about.
We got Mom back in this episode, which was great. She's not terribly prominent in this, but she has some amazing lines.
Stick a bastard in it, you crap.
You have a bastard in it, you crap. Then she slaps all 3 of them by sliding down the treadmill.
Yes. Although Mom's friendly package delivery, I thought Mom was in the robot industry. When did she diversify?
She's a conglomerate. She does everything.
It's weird because it seems to be only they can have her as the villain in this episode, which I don't mind. It's just
yeah. The real villain is late stage capitalism, of course.
As of course it is.
I wonder if they're robot deliveries too, because you know how not Apple, Amazon, two different A companies. Amazon is now doing like drone deliveries.
Speaking of which, I love the Goldborg bat mitzvah.
Yes.
I was waiting for you to comment on that.
That is such an A+ pun. And all the little jokes in that scene are incredible. Like, the sign in the back, the banner, that was in Hebrew, which I couldn't translate off the top of my head, so I had to look it up. Apparently, it reads, with some spelling errors, "Today you are a robot."
Okay.
I think just because of the joke of, like, you know, today you are a man, woman, adult.
Today are you a man? I am a robot. You are a machine. I am a man.
I mean, I know people for whom that they would just hear you say that and just go like, mood.
And then and of course I got the joke about them turning Zoidberg away, no shellfish, and the pig is like, yeah, you're telling me.
Yeah.
That was another good gag, and it goes to what I pointed out, you know, ages ago, all the way back in season 1, that the joke of Zoidberg being Jewish coded when he's shellfish, he's not kosher.
I mean, are humans kosher?
That's a very good question.
Well, they are sometimes called long pork.
Yeah, I wish I had a definitive answer for you, but I'm going to assume probably not.
No, yeah, it makes sense. I don't think humans are probably non-kosher on the exact same reasoning otherwise. They're very dirty creatures.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, like there were so many really good jokes in that scene. Like Fry bringing up Robot Jesus. It just...
The question is, why do they have food? They're robots.
That is a very good question. I didn't even think of that.
Maybe they have organic friends.
No, yeah, that would make sense.
I didn't see any organics aside from Fry.
They're just being polite.
They're standing just off screen. Just out of frame. Like, God, so many other really good jokes in this. Like, I love the Planet Express investor film with just like, tomorrow is today and today is yesterday. That's almost as ridiculous as our tagline.
The build up to the joke on the pie chart. This pie chart represents our entire investments of this year. And this pie chart is an $8 bank error in our favor.
Yes.
I mean, aside from all the horrible capitalism, this is a fun episode.
Oh, there are some really good jokes here. Like the cryogenic support group. I love that idea. Just because, of course, something like that would exist in a world where cryogenics works.
Mm-hmm. I want to know more about the carrots that took over Earth.
Right.
Yeah, that is a hell of a mystery that I don't think this show is particularly interested in answering.
So you're saying the show's writers don't care at all?
Damn it, TZ. I also feel so bad for that caveman whose wife is on display in the British Museum.
I think a lot of people can relate.
Yeah, side tangent, the British Museum must be dismantled and all of its stolen artifacts returned to their rightful homes.
Have you seen that thing about the people who shared the joke about the British Museum on Twitter and then they got blocked by them?
Yes.
They should steal Lizzie's casket and put a display in a foreign museum.
I could get behind that. That would be the greatest heist in history. Although, actually, on that subject, the original stuffed animals that inspired Winnie the Pooh are actually on display at the New York Public Library. And every time the Brits try to ask for them back, this leads to, like, a dozen other countries coming out of the woodwork being like, oh yeah, while we're talking about returning displaced national treasures... So there's really nothing the Brits can do. They're probably just never getting these stuffed animals back, and I find this very amusing. But yeah, if there were any justice in the world, the British Museum would be completely empty, because all of that shit is stolen.
Is there no British artifacts in the British Museum?
There might be, but it would like definitely be a small minority since it's a whole global thing, or at least with pretensions to that.
Yeah.
I'm also a fan of the Pat Buchanan gag during
Right,
the
which is
at
that's
the
a
end.
joke that worked at the time, but 20 years later, I'm not sure how many people watching this would even get that joke.
Yeah, so for context, Buchanan ran as an independent candidate in the 2000 presidential election. So this gag here is that Igner is like going, and then he pushes his button and his result is Pat Buchanan. And he's like, the ballot was confusing.
Yeah, that refers to specifically the Florida ballots, where they listed the candidates they're always listed in a random order, just to prevent I'll just vote for the guy at the top, just to prevent that sort of bias, which is an actual thing, believe it or not, because people don't give a shit when they cast their ballots. But they listed the two candidates, they listed the Democratic, or they listed the Republican and then Pat Buchanan and then the Democrat, or it might have been the other way around. So well, I don't want to vote for this person, so I'll vote for the one underneath, which obviously be their competitor, right? But no, that was what Pat Buchanan was listed. I think that was the issue.
So actually my family was down in Florida at the time while that election was going on, and so we mentioned this in a prior episode, but for the brief recap, the 2000 presidential election was an absolute shit show. It really just came down to who won Florida ultimately because it was so close. And there was this whole controversy over spoiled ballots and just issues with it. And then, of course, there was that lawsuit that basically the Supreme Court was like, okay, no, we're calling it here. We're saying that Bush won. He's the president because it was called in his favor early. And meanwhile, the Gore team were just like, guys, you really should finish counting all of the ballots. And in the end, after everything was counted, Gore won, but Bush ended up as president anyway because of this lawsuit. Anyway, my family was in Florida visiting my great-grandparents at the time, and we actually went to an election ground, an election spot. God, what's the term for it? We were there where the
polling place.
Yeah, we were at the polling place at the time while people were voting, and my dad had multiple people come up to him asking for his help reading the ballots because they were confusing and they couldn't understand them. And this was the election that basically decided the entire presidential election, and people couldn't understand the ballots.
Wow, that is just insane.
It is absolutely wild to think, yeah.
Well, a lot of people talk about the fact that Gore didn't win his home state either.
Yeah, well, it was a very weird election.
If he had won his home state, then Florida wouldn't have mattered anyway. So there's other factors involved. It wasn't just coming down to Florida. It's just Florida was the last one to report, probably because of the ballots.
Yeah, it was the final battleground state, and that was really what ultimately decided the election. And it was just having all of these issues.
But yeah, for a long time in the 2000s, making fun of Florida was just gold standard comedy right there.
I mean,
he's like, this is the new. I remember seeing this picture of traffic light that had 8 different lights, and even those little bars that would come out from the 1930s, stop, go. They had eight of those, all different colors. This is the new Florida. This is the new Florida traffic lights. They're very easy to understand.
There were so many controversies there. There was the whole hanging Chad thing.
Yeah, which became another joke that a lot of people would talk about. I was like, oh, you worked in my hanging Chad sketch.
It was a mess, and I can't believe we got this whole conversation just out of a 5-second gag and trying to explain the context for this.
Again, that's what's interesting about the joke, the fact that you really need to go on this 10-minute rant to explain why that's a joke.
To be fair, if you get the joke, it is very funny.
Yeah, I was too young.
And at the time, people were well aware of this controversy. This was national news.
Yeah. I think this episode ended in 2000, 2001.
Yeah, so this would have been right in that comfort zone. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that happening a year ago.
When did this air? This was 2002, March 2002 that this aired. This was 2 years old at the time. It was still something people remembered.
Mm-hmm.
I also love, there's a hand-biting background gag in the same scene of Fox being down 61 points on the stock exchange ticker. And I love that, just because I love how Matt Groening's shows will always take any opportunity to take the piss out of Fox when, that's the network they're airing on.
Mhm.
They would other Fox shows would make fun of Fox as well. That was a common joke on Married with Children. It's like, assume Fox viewing positions, they all had to hold up these like little antenna and stand touching each other to get the Fox network.
I also love how, as Fry is giving his big speech at the end, the Plan X share price is just rising and falling based on what he's saying.
Yeah, that's a really common joke, but it's done to good effect.
Yeah, the first time I saw this episode, I actually thought it was just random fluctuations, but, no, it's entirely coming from how what he's saying is affecting investor confidence as he goes. It's a really nice little touch. So I think my favorite gag in this episode, though, is where Fry's like, we're not a traditional family like the Murphys next door or the lesbian coven across the street.
Yes, I want to join that lesbian coven.
Yeah, I would like to know where this coven is, please, for personal reasons.
Yes.
Well, there's also the implication that a lesbian coven in the year 3000 is considered a traditional family. So family values has changed in the next 1,000 years.
As they should. Although, actually, I would not be surprised if that sort of thing was more accepted 1,000 years from now. Because, I know so many, lesbian witches who are in polycules, and many of them trans, and it's just, it's more of a thing. And,
trans lesbian polycule.
Yes, I mean, I'm in a trans lesbian polycule.
That sounds like how you would cast a spell. Trans lesbian polycule, yeah.
Oh, God. I do appreciate how even just being able to have multiple partners is becoming more accepted these days, just because if everyone can sense the arrangement, everyone knows what they're getting into, why the hell should it be a problem,
Yeah.
Oh, you have to be a polycule just to own a damn house.
At this point, yeah,
It's
we're
true.
kind of going in that direction. But, I did not deliberately set out to end up with multiple partners. It was just a situation of, I like this girl. We had been flirting in direct messages for several weeks. I talked to my girlfriend about it. She basically pushed me to go for it. And now I have 2 girlfriends.
2 whole girlfriends.
Holy shit, 2
Jeez,
cakes.
how come you get 2 girlfriends?
Because dysphoria is an absolute monster, but it is much harder to listen to it and hate yourself when you have 2 people telling you they love you.
Aw.
So tell your friends you love them today.
I mean, you should be doing that daily anyway.
Yes. I love you.
I love you too, Eden. You're a good friend.
Yay.
One joke that I felt was really kind of lame in this was the "get your trike off me, you damn dirty." That was just really.
It seems kind of
really
overdone.
Stretching it.
Yeah, it's really forced. Or, even just the bit at the beginning where the guy puts the 5 instead of an S in the sign, it's just good thing I noticed similar shapes. That's also really forced, because that's just a thing that happens. You could have just had a close-up on the sign. You didn't need to call attention to it.
No, that was the joke. The fact that he thinks he's so clever for doing that. And it's yeah, you're not clever. It's just what people do. The joke is on him, not on... I suppose maybe a little bit on the audience, too, for thinking they were expecting a better joke. But yeah, I thought that was an okay one.
I guess. I don't know. There's also the immortal line at the end that, if I remember correctly, was a meme for a little while. My only regret is that I have bonitis.
There were a lot of memes in this episode. There's the bonitis, but also Fry clapping with sandwiches in his hands.
Yes. But God, naturally, of course the guy doesn't have any regrets. He's incapable of having regrets. He's a business executive. He does not possess the level of self-awareness required to reflect upon and be capable of regretting his actions.
Yeah. He is a terror.
I like this episode. It is very funny, but honestly, the very concept of investors in stock markets is so fucking ridiculous. You
don't like the concept. You don't like the episode in concept, just in execution.
Yeah, I like it in execution far more than in concept. Like I just said, stockbrokers and stock markets are inherently absurd. You're not creating any sort of value. You're not doing anything. The entire investor class could disappear off the face of the earth tomorrow, and in no way would society be any worse off. the best way I've heard it described is the stock market is just gambling for rich people where the stakes include poor people's livelihoods.
Yeah, that's about right.
Like, not to get communist on Maine, because despite how it often seems, I am not in fact a communist, but a company should not be owned by investors who are already rich beforehand, but by the workers who actually make the stuff, the workers who make the company actually function, the people who really create the value of it.
But please, no, but tell us how you really feel.
Anyway.
Good episode. Horrible, horrible people.
Yeah, I think this episode works in large part because the very concept of stock markets is so just inherently absurd, you know? Like, that lends it the whole extra air of comedy that they're
Also, this interesting note is that this is like the second episode in this season that involves a hostile takeover of Planet Express.
That's... I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so like both of them are like from external sources in this case. Like I imagine the mom takeover is a lot more logical in that sense. So I don't know if they both had the idea for these two ideas or if they were kind of developed separately. Because yeah, Root of All Evil that's kind of at the lower end of my list for the season, but this one's actually pretty decently high, I think.
I'm gonna look up who wrote which episode and see if that clarifies anything.
Remember our thoughts on Root of All Evil was that it was one of those episodes that really kind of, it didn't seem very cohesive.
Yeah.
It seemed like kind of one thing happened, then another thing happened, then another thing happened.
Okay, so according to the Infosphere wiki, The Root of All Evil was written by Dan Weber and Future Stock was written by Aaron Ahas. I'm sure that I mangled that pronunciation there, but yeah, different writers, so maybe they were developed independently, and then it's just a coincidence?
Maybe. We're not the writers.
And they would have like one main writer, but they'd always kind of go to all the other writers for input on these things. So they would have one main person, but a lot of writers worked on multiple things.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if they noticed this parallel when they were making these episodes. Because I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, I could buy it either way. Regardless, I think we've gone on long enough, and I need to go invest in some sandwiches.
Sandwiches. I'm gonna go invest in that sandwich coven.
Thank you for listening to Space Podcast 3000. Your three voices of the future are Nova Altman, Doug Hancox, and Eden Valerie. The theme music is Voxel Revolution by Kevin MacLeod. You can support the show and listen to new episodes a full week early at patreon.com/spacepod3k. Follow us on Twitter at spacepod3k. Be sure to join us next time as the Planet Express crew witness a legendary cooking battle in the 30% Iron Chef.